Welcome again, everyone. Today is Saturday, August 25th. Jim and Dave, you guys on?
I'm here.
Jim?
You got me, David. I'm right here, Bill.
Good. All right. So Jim and I did an interview yesterday. It'll be out, I guess, early hours Sunday morning with Greg Hunter. We talked extensively regarding the emerging market bubble that has been popped. So we're not going to go over that. We may touch on that today, but we did a full hour interview. So we'll the plan today. David's got questions for the two of us, and we'll see where they go. So David.
Bill, how you doing? Let's go. I'd like to start with this Russian story because, as I tell listeners every week, I'm non-political. It's not like Donald's my boy or anybody's my friend or I like any of these guys. I just call out what's going on as it's taking place. Being neutral on the voting platform, I want to bring attention to the Kevin Schiff story that is out this week, where he's saying it was a failed coup by the mainstream media covering up the DOJ dossier. This has been going on now for 18 months or how many ever months it is, and I've yet to see proof of anything. I talk to people every day. I ask them, did you possibly change your vote based on anything you did see or hear? And they're like, they look at you like you have three eyes. And I say, well, I'm just asking because I don't vote, So my point being is, I ask you guys, we're sitting here now 18 months into this, and, we're trying to come up with, I know Manafort's been convicted and pled guilty. None of this had anything to do with Russian collusion so far that we've seen. Your thoughts?
Well, we know it's never going to have anything to do with Russian collusion because it's the wrong party that's being focused on and framed as the colluder. So obviously from the beginning, it has revealed how dangerous it is to be on a ladder of power, either financially or politically, in the United States. And we're exposing ourselves every day. The king does not have any clothes on, and he's gross. Okay, so we're doing more damage to ourselves as a nation when anybody with a brain in their heads has got to see that this entire thing is a setup. And my concern, as I talked to you before, is, how long is Trump going to sit around just taking the punches and tweeting somebody ought to look at Hillary Clinton, period? I really would like to see if I just see a plan. Because we are going on and on like a person caught in the waves in the Atlantic Ocean. We don't plan. We react. We don't act. Our financial system is a total disaster, and nobody has any idea of how huge the entire global disaster is, if I might say, except Bill's focus on the debt and our knowledge of what constitutes the debt. What you said, Bill?
Well, I agree. This Russian collusion, Russia hacked the election story is complete bunk. The only connections to Russia that I've seen have been from the Democrats. Go back to, 2009, 2010. You got the Uranium One. Who bought 20% of U.S. uranium? Russia. Who was in power? Who allowed it to happen? Hillary and company. So
yet nobody goes, oh my God.
Right, exactly. They do, but the voices, our voices. I've written about it. I know you've talked about it, Jim. The people that the population is led by the headlines. and the headlines say Trump collusion, the headlines don't say anything about Uranium One. The headlines don't say anything about fake dossier. The headlines, it's obviously there's collusion amongst the media. Because there's no dissenting voices anywhere in the media.
None. And it's so obvious.
Fox veers off, but it's
but even Fox,
that's one voice in the woods.
Yeah, even Fox is moderating to some degree.
As a matter of fact, I think we mentioned something about this yesterday on our call with Greg. Did you guys? I know you saw it, Jim, but Dave, did you see where an 11-year-old hacked a clone of the Florida
the Diebold machine? Actually, yes. I think I sent it in for post because that was what I was going to bring up. At the Nevada, apparently in Nevada they had some hacking contest, and an 11-year-old hacked a Diebold machine. And I said to somebody this week, because again, this is for the unwashed public. Anybody who wants to look into it, the Ohio election would have been won by John Kerry, and you look this story up, hopefully you will. John Kerry would have won the Ohio election. George Bush won the Ohio election because the machines were hacked. Karl Rove's IT man dies in a plane crash just before he was going to testify about it. And again, whether you do or don't believe it, research it. There's too many strange coincidences. So it's not Russia who hacks the election. We've been hacking our own elections. How did George Bush become president? Hanging chads? Is that something that what is hanging chads? I wish we would just go back to a written ballot. How hard would that be? Then they couldn't hack it. So, again...
And there would be complaints, David, that people don't know how to write.
Well, and you're correct. They can't mark an X on the paper. But
an 11-year-old kid is not a savant.
Right.
Obviously the kid knows how to punch a computer, but every report I've seen, doesn't say that this kid's an absolute savant.
Yeah, and there were a bunch of kids that were able to hack it within 30 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move this to the next part of this, whole equation. Because before you turned on the recording, we talked about this. Prior to the election, Donald Trump said the stock market was a bubble, that Janet Yellen was artificially keeping interest rates low so that Obama looked like a hero with the rising stock market, and that he was going to put a stop to this Wall Street nonsense and the 0% interest that was, artificially propping up the market. On the night of the election, those of us who paid attention immediately saw gold want to go through the roof and the futures for the U.S. markets go the other way. And before I got up at 4:30 in the morning to continue my day, what was normal all of a sudden became abnormal, and everything was going the other way. For the last 2 years now, we've seen the gold market be punished while the stock market in the U.S. goes up. The rest of the world is having not so good a year, but the U.S. it's just been on a one-way move since Donald's been elected. Along the way, Donald is elected to call himself the owner of the stock market, and it's going through the roof. And he's out this week saying that the Fed chairman doesn't have his back because he's continuing to rise interest rates while our neighbors are manipulating their currency. China and the European Union are manipulating their currency artificially, holding them down. And, he needs the Fed to help him here. Jim, Bill, whichever one wants to go first, your take on this. Where are we going?
We're pushing the envelope beyond its capacity to remain intact. The push may continue longer than even we expect, but not without the other participant, the other major participant to the dollar gold, doing what it did this week. There is an increasing realization that we're living in a make-believe world, but the make-believe world is so much of a benefit to the commentators that they dare not or want to call any attention to anything that might interfere with it. The deep state is made up of more low-level, middle-level bureaucrats than it is of geniuses sitting somewhere on the top of a pyramid. The swamp can't be cleaned out because there's simply too many. And cleaning up a bureaucracy and making it into a functional entity is a contradiction in terms. It's not an oxymoron. And on top of that, we really don't know what the Donald intends to do, what his purposes are, or for whom he works. So I think we're stuck with what we got with one change. Gold begins to appreciate, gets violent, market remains relatively violent, but doesn't really get anywhere. Eventually, gold takes off. Interest rates become the powers that be lose control, and everything that we expect, in fact, will occur. That's better than what I said yesterday.
David, I would just say that Trump was telling you the truth as a candidate, and now doesn't want to face the realization that in order to go forward, markets have to be destroyed. And you just mentioned regarding world markets, the U.S. market, equity market, is the only equity market that's up this year. All stock markets around the world are down, except for the U.S. And as we talked about yesterday, and we wrote, Jim wrote, I wrote this past week, the emerging market bubble has been pricked. And that's come about because of higher U.S. rates and higher dollar values. And now all of a sudden you're seeing currency after currency blow up. So there's definitely it has begun. And the thing about the emerging markets is there's not a derivative salve that they can put on it to fix it. Really, the only thing they can do is literally print money and give it away, give it to these emerging markets so that they can pay it back. So we definitely we're past a defining moment, and that's because of the emerging markets. So as far as what Trump was saying before and what he's saying now, I mean, clearly what he's saying now is laughable, and we talked about it as long back as, I'm going to say, 9 months or a year ago, that Trump owns the U.S. stock market. I mean, for him to say, well, if I get impeached, the market will collapse, and the market is up because I'm the president, that's nonsense.
Well, and again,
there'll be enormous regrets of that, Bill.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, it's almost like, and again, I don't want to use the word being held hostage.
You could.
Well, and again, I'm using it only because, it's a thought that comes to mind. If you wanted to make somebody do when I see a 180-degree turn in somebody, and I say this all the time, I like having known somebody for a very, very, very long period of time. The guy I was business partners with, we went back to the 6th grade. I never, ever looked to see if he was cheating me. Never, even to this day. And we had a very large company together. Never, ever. And if he was, that's not how I work. I did have a business also, and prior, where I did have a business partner who was less than accurate in his accounting, and we're still friends. So, the point I'm getting at is everything has to do with loyalty, man. If you can't trust the people you're working with, the way to turn people sometimes is to have something on them. And again, and I'm not saying
Washington, David. Everybody has something on everybody.
Well, it's and I tried to explain this to somebody this week. You can't get to be in a position of immense power, whether it's real or perceived wealth, without having skeletons in your closet. Would you agree with that statement?
What businessman doesn't? Whether or not he wants them, he may have just been next to them. Therefore, he's got it.
So that being said, we've got plenty of stuff to go to. Let's move on here. Again, I'm just trying to – there's so much going on in the course of a week, a day, a minute. And, most of this stuff is stuff that's only covered by MSN, the mainstream media. There's things going on that we can't even get into because, one, it would be over a lot of people's heads because this world is going absolutely out of its mind. We had an interview a while back where I believe we talked to a guy named Bix Weir, who at one time was really pro-gold and silver, and he's not a bad guy. He's, smart in a lot of ways, but like Jim and Bill have alluded to and other things that they may or may not have said on other interviews, about who really understands gold. Because after the beating that the gold industry has been under for the last 7-8 years, however long it's been, it's like it's been torture. And even people who should have known better have succumbed to Stockholm Syndrome, where they actually think the people that are beating them are their friends and are correct. There's not a lot of soldiers left standing on the front line of gold saying, this is all BS. They're psyoping you. Look around. Gold has gone up in country after country after country after country that has been attacked. And that plan...
Let me correct you on that. Currency after currency after currency has collapsed. Gold hasn't gone up.
Well, right, but we had the conversation. Paper's worthless. The whole Western world goes to work every day for a piece of paper with ink on it, I think Jim called it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not even, who called it money?
It's not money, it's currency.
Exactly.
It's only currency because it's accepted.
By the sheep.
Yeah,
the sheep are willing to eat.
That people work, strive, live their life around accumulating pieces of paper.
Right. What are they? And again, this is all going to come to fruition, and it's only a matter of time. Because if you were in Venezuela, you don't want to get paid every week by their currency.
Every day.
Well, wouldn't it be easier to say, give me a piece of silver every day? Here's your silver dollar. So, and let's move that to the next question. Okay, so we did have this interview with these people about cryptocurrencies. At the time, cryptocurrencies were
7,500 on Bitcoin at the time. It was last November.
So New York Times is running an article this week about how Bitcoin investors, this kid, he's a young guy, he's put $23,000 in last winter. It's now worth $4,000. And the most amazing part, and this is what really blows me away, Peter Roberts of Nottingham, England, was one of many risk takers who threw their savings into cryptocurrencies when prices were going through the roof last winter. Google the number of articles that the New York Times, Washington Post, and all the other major networks covered on cryptocurrencies in a positive light, and how many of them forget. You can't find a positive article that was written about gold a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, unless you're on the alternative media. The point I'm getting at is here we are, guys. Were you correct when you tried to tell people do not sell your gold and buy cryptocurrencies here? Go ahead.
Well, yeah. I mean,
And wasn't that and wasn't it mostly our gang that gave cryptocurrencies both written support and a bit of a financial start?
yeah, and David, the game's not even close to over yet.
Well, they're going to go to zero, but that's beside the point.
That's my point. That's my point, is that these, if you want to call it private cryptocurrencies, in my opinion, and I think Jim agrees, are going to go to zero. And we have no doubt that there's going to be cryptocurrencies all over the world, but they're going to be issued by governments.
Correct. Well, you're witnessing that, and we're going to get ahead of ourselves in our little questions here. So about what other countries are going to do, because I know where this is going. Obviously, it's not that complicated because I'm not that smart.
Going to a chip in your forehead is where it's going.
Well, not in my forehead. I will put the bullet in my forehead before they put the chip in my forehead.
But we joke about that. But
no, we don't. That's very serious.
Their chip is coming. It's the merging of the human with artificial intelligence. And it is absolutely for real. So now everybody said I put back on my tinfoil hat. I have like hell.
Right.
Artificial intelligence merging with people is where this whole thing is headed.
Okay, so again, all we're getting at is for a period of time, we looked like we were wrong on the cryptocurrency call. I mean, when I say looked like we were wrong, in that moment, if you took a time frame, whether it was December, January, February, whenever it was, people would say, oh, well, look, Bill and Jim don't know what they're talking about. And here's the biggest one, if I sold my gold at this exact minute and bought this currency at this exact minute, and I would be, that's not in the real world. That's like going to the horse races and after the race saying, well, if I put my, there's only one true storehouse of value, correct?
Correct.
It's the measuring stick.
Exactly. And have you ever seen mainstream media come out and say that to the public in any way, shape, or form?
Never.
No, never.
Okay, so then let's move this to the next question. The story's put out by Goldcore. Russia buys 800,000 ounces of gold for the month of July.
It's 25. That's 25 more tons.
Okay, wait a minute. Why would Russia be buying all this gold if it's a worthless relic and it's not real money?
Alan Greenspan has asked that question. Alan Greenspan was interviewed, and he asked the question, why do all these central banks still hold $1 trillion or a little over $1 trillion worth of gold if it's a worthless relic that has a cost to store? And the answer is because it is money. It is the yardstick.
When in war, the reality of currency is exposed by the losing entity. Very simple. The losing entity, devoid of gold, can't buy war materials to continue their activities. Which was money? The currency of the nation in the losing position, or whatever gold they had left in their central bank or treasury. Answer simple. Whatever they could exchange for war materials was money.
Right.
It wasn't paper.
Look at Germany after World War II. They could not import anything unless they paid for it with gold.
Absolutely. And we're getting to a point where the contagion coming from the acceptance of of debt by the emerging markets, emerging world, emerging financial activity has busted them right and left. Turkey's not a political situation. And anybody who thinks Venezuela can't land in Connecticut is absolutely just doesn't understand. Don't even look at history. I mean, we said yesterday, the exact words that Ms. Chavez is saying now that's getting great publicity is the exact words that got Venezuela started into socialism.
Right.
The exact words. Don't they understand what's happening here in the United States? Don't they understand where the snowflakes want to go? Are they blind? Or is it just that you think what you want to think in order to remain calm within the environment you're in for the simple pleasure of living? It's not a question they're wrong. It's a question they're blind. The same words Chavez uses was used to sell socialism to a country in general. They went through two regimes that absolutely blew the place apart, and now it is hell on earth. I mean, absolute hell on earth. And the only people that are remaining there are those that have no other alternative. And what we're saying to our listeners is, you ever hear of options, alternatives, preparedness? Let's say you're in Hawaii. Wouldn't a bug-out bag be a good idea?
No, I don't know about that, Jim. Where do you bug out to? Higher ground?
Higher ground.
Yes.
Higher ground, but then you can eat. And maybe you got a ring.
Then you're up top of a volcano.
Yeah, well, that blows up, and that blows up, and then you really know what this is all about.
Hey, while we're talking about Russia, that's starting the Syria situation. Now Russia's talking about putting tactical nukes within Syria. That's starting to come to a head, and they also it looks like it's coming to a head versus the dollar. I mean, they're making some serious soundings about. Is this one of the things you were going to get to, Dave?
Yeah, this is
All right, go ahead.
So
we talk about Russia too.
Think about
the next war. If
you guys are talking over each other.
Sorry.
What were you going to say, Jim? And then Dave will get to the question.
Technology wins the next war. So if you got the faster missile, you win. They
got that satellite now.
Yeah, we are not the great world power, and eventually that will be recognized. Now I'm starting to sound like the guy, the governor of New York.
Well, now I'm going to start to sound like some real old man, but when our lifestyle changes, and it is going to change, can you just hear it now? Can you hear the snowflakes saying, well, that's not fair?
Of course, in a room with a teddy bear and ice cream.
Go ahead, David.
Well, see, this was a roll into the next question. Why do people assign value to paper money? We talked about this before. I was talking to my wife the other day. We're going down the road, and I'm like, I'm traveling early in the morning, so I'm like in rush hour business traffic, and I'm saying to her, can you imagine every single person in every one of these cars does this every single day for paper money, that whoever you want to call the boss prints it, doesn't even print it, creates it artificially out of nothing, and this is like a hamster habitat. Every single day they wake up and they get in the wheel. They're shiny metal boxes, and their whole life is dictated by chasing, and I'm going to call it paper money just because that's ultimately what they pull out of their wallet. But they're assigning value to absolutely nothing. At least back when we were kids, Bill, you would see the Cowboys go in the saloon. And what would they put down when they wanted a beer and a shot?
A piece of silver.
So where did we lose this? Go ahead.
Wow.
Well,
It's a good gig if you can get it.
You wanted to sell more liquor than the public could pay for, so you gave them all an IOU. I mean, is that now?
And the IOU carries interest.
Well, again, it's just I look at people going down the road every single day, and they're doing it in $100,000 cars, and whatever, and they're just like, you're really going to go do this for a piece of paper? Have you ever thought about asking your boss for like a roll of silver dollars?
Hey, David, we should bring this to the next level. The world is Venezuela. The whole world, whether people get it yet or not, the whole world is Venezuela. This past week, they devalued. What did they do? They added 5 zeros or 4 zeros or cut that off. That was a 95% drop in value. Now think about this. Okay, so you're a pensioner. You worked your whole life. You're 65, 70 years old. You've saved. You did everything right. You played the game. You worked hard. You saved 10% or 20% of every paycheck. You put it in the bank, and guess what? Now you can't eat.
Okay. That's exactly where I'm going for this. You're working for a piece of paper. If you lived in Venezuela and you worked for a silver dollar, what do you have at the end of the day?
A silver dollar. You have wealth.
It's a silver.
Right.
Or an ounce of gold.
Right.
So apparently, and again, I don't think we're going to be proven wrong on this. Bitcoin was a scam. Paper money is the biggest scam going. And that's why I was asking these questions. A topic we don't have to get into on this particular one, but we're going right to it.
Hey, David, getting back to because I thought you were going to ask about, Russia is now making very serious rumblings about completely moving away from the dollar. And
right.
It's not just Russia.
No.
And you can bet China will go along with it once it gets rolling.
All right. Well, here's where I'm going. My next thing to you is, we have the story now. Germany calls for a global payment system independent of the U.S. Okay. Think about that for a second and then go to...
Didn't Germany lose? Didn't they lose World War II? And now they're calling for the end of the dollar.
Well...
And the reason being we got fat, lazy, and we deserve it.
Well, isn't that the end of all civilizations and empires?
Yes.
Okay.
Bread and circuses.
Yeah. And teddy bears and ice cream.
Well, see, what the real story here is, and I have a lot of friends who are in, be they school teachers, work for towns or cities, and not only are they on pensions, some of them are getting ready to go on them. And I try to explain to them, mathematically, how does this work? How is a teacher going to get paid, $78,000 for the rest of your life? You're 60 years old. And I know the finances of the state or town that you're in, and the math just doesn't work. Well, and again, this comes back down to what is a piece of paper worth. And they could pass out all the pieces of paper, and they could say $72,000 on them a year, $83,000, $117,000. The pooper picker-upper gets $185,000 a year, like you posted. But it's still a piece of paper. Nobody talks about getting paid in a store of value, do they?
They don't know what it is. They've never seen it. They don't understand it. They can't conceive of it. Therefore, they go to paper. Well, for thousands and thousands of years, the shekels and silver and the Roman coins or the coin of whatever realm, the Jesuits had gold coins. have done nothing but been the storehouse, the savings account, the one that didn't fail, the one without the liability. And that, like telling the truth about what's going on now, is not in the best interest then of MSM or some guy in Rome making a tablet out of a piece of marble for the newspaper. It was the same then. It is in fact the same now. Biggest mistake ever happened to Rome was when Caesar borrowed too much money to run for the Senate. They had a crisis.
Well, the bottom line is the public has been completely dumbed down, and if you want to call it, history erased and rewritten since 1965.
Well, they're pulling statues down now.
Well, I'm talking from a monetary standpoint. 1964, our dimes and quarters had silver.
Yes.
And half dollars and dollars had silver in them. From that point forward, and from August 15th, 1971, when we stiffed the rest of the world and we defaulted, we've been a 100% fiat system. And the average person goes to work and gets paid and the money's fine, but the population has been dumbed down about so many things, but the most important thing is about money itself.
What is money?
Right, exactly.
Too funny, guys. And again, so we could now take this to the end of, again, U.S. imposes new Russian sanctions that will stay in place until Russia changes its behavior. At the same time, Russia comes out and says, thank God this is happening because it's time to completely ditch the dollar.
That's the story I was talking about.
Right. Now, and I'd just like to read a quick sentence. The potential use of the dollar as a baseball bat has been evident for more than a decade for Russians, Chinese, and Iranians. For this reason, they have been exchanging their dollars for other currencies for years. The United States, as a declining empire, is lashing out, employing every weapon available to try and arrest its diminishing status as the world's sole superpower. Now it is the turn of America allies to relinquish the dollar, coming to understand that real sovereignty is ensured through economic sovereignty. This is followed by a story about China and Russia increasing gold reserves. This is not about being pro-U.S. or anything about do I love any other country. Strictly about money. Gold is money.
David, I think it was 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now, Putin came out and said that the U.S. weaponizing the dollar is a very dangerous strategy. And you used the term using the dollar as a baseball bat. And what Putin was saying, what he knows, what China knows, what the rest of the world knows, the dollar is the Achilles heel. The dollar is the weak point.
Yeah, absolute summation. Very clear. Inescapable. Pure logic.
And it isolates us.
Well, we're doing that every way we possibly can figure it out. The best one is more sanctions on Russia because of the double agent and his daughter who was supposedly poisoned by the Russians in a park in London, in Great Britain. They have to put sanctions on for that.
So, again, let's just keep this now the conclusion of this. Jim Kunster wrote an article, Financial Rackets Replaced Real Economy, and they have come unglued, which is exactly what Jim has been saying forever. I mean, we've got computers running the show, but yet we have our Fed Chairman Powell speaks that the rate hikes are appropriate. There's no risk of overheating or a strong economy problem, followed by, I believe Reuters put it out, the U.S. economy is set to slow from here, being damaged by the trade war, according to most economists. So the public is left here with what coming out of all of this? We have rackets, but Powell's going to keep raising interest rates.
You know what the public is left with, David? They got to get up Monday morning to go to work so they can pay their debt. That's what they're left with. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, for a lot of years, I drove down to New York every day. And you'd be amazed, the same people were in the same cars, in the same clutches, every single day. It was like you're a member of a club. You recognize people who are going down there. And that is the march of the sheep, based on all of us taking this horrible drive down the West Side Drive, excruciating pain at 5 miles an hour, if you ever got up to that, for one single thing, a scam. The scam was, that stuff is paper and ink, man, and it's all over the place. And not only that, if you took all of the bank statements that you have, and the statements on other accounts, and the derivatives you've been trading, and said, today, all this has to be settled for pieces of paper with ink on them. There aren't enough pieces of paper with ink on them to get anywhere near the amount of debt outstanding. This is going to continue? No,
hey, Jim, let me add to that, because you've said this for, you said it for probably longer than a couple of years, but you've said that there's no way the system could ever settle because there's not enough, like you just said, pieces of paper with ink on them or digital pieces. I think it would be better said if you said there's not enough equity.
Yeah. The debt is enormous. The equity is minuscule. How about that?
Right. The debt can never be settled because the equity does not exist.
Yeah. So the thing is not only a scam, it's a form of massive global creative accounting.
And Jim, going one step further,
sure.
How do you make the equity exist? Let's say that settlement day is coming, and it is coming. The settlement day is the reset day.
Yes.
The way that you create the equity to settle the debt is you make the money worth more. Well, you're not going to do that with pieces of paper. The money is gold. The money is silver.
The asset
There's your reset right there.
To overcome global bankruptcy, the asset must rise in value, or the whole place becomes Mad Max, which Venezuela is.
Right.
The most organized body in Venezuela right now is organized crime. And there is some form of thought that if a coup was to take place, organized crime would be the most powerful entity. They have dinner at night, you know. They have toilet paper. If they get sick, they can get medicine. Not the average guy. Maybe organized crime's what's taken over this place, but in a different suit. In my opinion, yes.
Well, again, I tried to do this in a whole circle to bring us to this point because, again, obviously there's daily in and out with gold, and, what they've done to gold shares, the HUI at 140 is like, really?
It's a joke. It's unbelievable.
It's a joke. But if you don't understand the scam, it's hard for you to see what's going on. I think we've painted a pretty good picture. I think you guys have done a great job all along. I think in the end, you're going to look like geniuses. And I think that's a good way to end this. You guys
We're not geniuses, David. It's just common sense.
It's common sense, people. I don't know genius. 1 and 1 is 2. It's not 3. Okay? I could be 3. Maybe it would be that for me, but it isn't. And one of the greatest scientists in the world made a prediction. And that prediction was the last invention man will make is artificial intelligence, and guess what happened a few months later? He died. Okay? That's the last, that prediction in itself defines the year 50,000. And we're in 20-something. What happened? Where will we be in 50,000? Think of how screwed this is up. It can't keep going. Back to basics. Back to being self-sustained. Back to learning a trade. Okay? Back to learning how to live with your hands, other than strangling people and crying. We are all Venezuela, Bill. You are so correct. And you really have brought this thing nicely, Dave. Scripted. Anyone who's listening, to freaking wake up. I congratulate you on that, and thank you.
Yeah, good job, David. We just wonder where you're calling us from this week.
Right. Well, it's funny, where I am.
Two different places.
Where I am, sometimes, there's bears, and, people say, bears? I says, yeah, sometimes you have to, fight the bears or wrestle the bears. They say, how do you do that? I says, with your bare hands. What are you, stupid? All right, guys, I think that's a great way to wrap this up. I hope that, again, it's painful watching it happen right now, how they've been able to just manipulate everything. But in the end, you know how this ends. I mean, there's only one ending.
It's ending now.
It's ending now, and everybody's running around collecting paper dollars. I mean, I can't believe it. If I had a landscape, I watch landscapers in all these wealthy neighborhoods to a landscape, and I said, if they were smart enough to just tell their boss they want to get paid in silver dollars, it would be a great tax advantage for both the boss and them.
Right now, being a landscaper is not a bad idea, except your clients have to be too rich to buy your services sometimes. I'm back to electricity I'm back to electricity and plumbing.
Yeah, but in any case, I think we've made our point. There's really only one money, and if you were in any of these other countries, you would realize that, and you're going to realize that soon here. So
Venezuela's not far away. Go take a look. You'll run out.
So, well,
guys, have a good weekend.
All right, guys, it's been fun. Bye.
Nice talking to you. Thank you again very much. I so appreciate being a part of this.
Thank you. Bye.